Hey guys, welcome back to Horsepower Obsessed. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about those build codes that we thought were for the C8 that were leaked a few days ago. Alright, so if you remember in my previous video, which I'll actually link up here to the top right, we were talking about the build codes. There had been two new codes leaked online that everybody just assumed were for the actual C8 mid-engine Corvette, when in reality, these were actually for a special edition C7 Corvette that's going to basically close out the 7th generation Corvette lineup. These codes, 1YC07 and 1YC67, like I reported in my previous video, were assumed that they were for the C8 Corvette. But there was speculation on the internet, even when these codes first leaked, that it could be for some sort of final edition C7 Corvette. A lot of people didn't want to believe that because it seems a little late in the C7 generation to be bringing out another model. But this does appear to finally be the word, is that it is another C7 special edition model. There is an agenda of events happening at the Corvette Coral for next weekend's Rolex 24 at Daytona. And as you'll see here, listed for 11:30 a.m. on Friday, there is a 2019 Corvette Special Edition announcement at the Chevrolet Experience. Obviously means we're going to get another special edition for 2019. And that's also where these build codes come in. Now, some of you may be asking, well, what kind of special edition are we going to get? What's it going to be? And if you remember, about 6 months ago or so, there was some pictures circulating on the internet of a flat gray colored Z06 with a large wing in the back, just like the ZR1. Also had a roll cage and it had orange accents on the ground effects around the bottom. Now, this car is the one I believe we're going to be getting. This would be the perfect track car. And odds are good that's what these build codes are indicating, whether or not you want the higher spoiler or the lower spoiler, whether or not you want certain options on the car. Now, the pictures I'm displaying here now, these are the actual photos of that car that circulated shortly after the ZR1 was released. And there's a couple things that come to mind when I'm showing these photos. Number one, obviously we got that big wing in the back, which is going to be good for track use. It's going to keep a lot of downforce on those rear tires to keep everything planted nicely on a track. Number two is in the front and in the rear, it looks like pre-installed tow hooks for really getting that car back and forth to the track easily. Number three, it looks like the fender vents are for a Z06, but it does not have a Z06 logo on it. Now, of course, this could just be because this is an unfinished concept at this point, because if you notice, it also doesn't have the actual Corvette flags on the front or back, or the center caps on the wheels. But the interesting thing to me is that the front, the hood, looks like it's actually from a Grand Sport or Stingray. It doesn't have the wider hood vent that the Z06 does. So again, if we're talking about what could potentially be a car purposely built for the track, then we're talking about likely the Stingray engine, the 455 or 460 horsepower LT1 under the hood here instead of a supercharged engine that could potentially heat soak in heavy track use. Another interesting thing is the tires. These are the Sport Cup 2 tires, which again are great for track use, but if you look behind the rim, you're actually going to see the steel two-piece rotors instead of the carbon ceramic rotors that typically go hand in hand with the Sport Cup 2 tires. This would again be an attempt to make this car as track focused as possible, because even though the carbon ceramics are great for stopping on the track, they don't hold up to heavy track use, and they're extremely expensive to replace. It looks like GM is going with a track purpose car here that is also not going to break the bank if that's all you use it for. It's definitely an interesting offering from GM. This kinda is reminiscent of what they did with the 5th generation Camaro. While the ZL1 was out, they decided to announce a Z28 that was going to be specifically built for the track. It took a lot of the same things from the ZL1, reduced a lot of weight, and added a couple more things that were specifically track oriented. Now with this picture here, obviously you're going to see An option on this car is likely to be a roll cage, which again is a fantastic addition for anybody who wants to take this to the drag strip or even to the track. If this car is going to be running under a certain time, this is something you're going to want anyway, and I think it's great that Chevy would offer this as an option. The car has a pretty interesting look with the color that they chose for this particular one. Again, this is kind of a pre-production model, so I don't know if this color would ever make it to an actual car, but if it did, it's an interesting option. It's a complete matte colored gray, which is definitely outside of GM's typical offerings for paint colors. Now, obviously, we also get that orange effect on the ground effects and on the actual spoiler in the back, which is kind of interesting. Definitely not my favorite thing, but I'm glad to see that Chevy is getting a little bit more courageous with their offerings with the color combinations. Of course, with the ZR1, you get a completely carbon fiber spoiler. Odds are good GM is trying to make this car to keep the price down for people who want to get on the track or want to get on the drag strip. So you can get this car without all the big expenses of a carbon fiber wing. Odds are good that wing is either made out of fiberglass or carbon fiber, but as we know, the carbon fiber, when it's laid out for the weave to look perfect, it's more expensive. With everything I'm seeing on the car, it looks like GM's trying to keep the price down for the end user so we can get out on the track, get out on the drag strip, and not have to worry about replacing $2,000 rotors one at a time. Now, like I said a little bit ago, it does look like the vents on the fenders are from the Z06 with no Z06 logo. The front hood is definitely from a Stingray or Grand Sport with the smaller hood heat extractor. It's interesting that they would use that Z06 side vent, though, and not have that Z06 logo, because it tells me this car is obviously going to be called something else. So we're looking at a car that's not a Z06, it's not a Grand Sport, it's not a ZR1. It's going to be something purposely track built, which could potentially be an entirely new model added to the C7 lineup. My guess is with the 1YC07 package, you probably get the carbon ceramic rotors as well, versus the 1YC67 package, you probably just get the steel rotors. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, the carbon ceramic rotors are great for the track, but the problem is when they wear out, which they do if heavy track is used, they're very expensive to replace. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $1,800 a piece is the cheapest I've found them on Amazon. Now, of course, this is just speculation, but if you go with the 1YC67 package, which I believe is probably the low wing with the steel rotors, it's still going to be a track-built car, but you're not going to have the heavy expenses of replacing carbon ceramic rotors and things like that if a lot of track use is happening. Obviously, with the 1YC07, you would get the high-rise spoiler, the carbon ceramic rotors, and a fully built track purpose car, but it's going to be more expensive to keep it maintained for the track. Now, of course, this is just my speculation. It kind of goes hand in hand with some of the build codes we've been seeing, I think, and the fact that this car was pictured not too long ago in a couple spy shots shortly after the ZR1 kind of tells me GM is definitely going for a specific build here, and this is probably going to finish out the C7 generation Corvette. Of course, if this is actually GM's track-built Corvette specifically for the track or drag strip, it makes perfect sense to release it at Daytona. So it makes even more sense that that's what we're going to be getting when you think about it like that. Now, Chevy has released a couple different special editions for the C7 generation, the last one most notably being the Carbon 65. And of course, they're all fantastic cars. I mean, you really can't get a bad Corvette nowadays. In my personal opinion, I think this is a great idea for Chevy to do this. It really gives the people the ability to get that car out on the track and out on the drag strip. And if they do it right, you could possibly do it at a fairly low expense. Because it's not supercharged, it's not going to have the Z06 engine, odds are good this is going to start around the same price that a Grand Sport would, maybe even lower depending on the options. If they go a route like they did with the Z28 5th generation Camaro, you could be looking at options to have your car equipped with no AC, no radio, no speakers, no trunk sound deadening and carpet, things like that that would really help reduce the weight of this car around the track as well. Definitely interesting stuff. I love the direction that GM's going with this. It really seems like they're gearing up for one last final push with the C7 right before we get the C8. And what better way than a purpose-built track car? All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Give me a big thumbs up if you liked what you saw here. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll catch you guys in the next upload.